Picture this. In 1985, IBM, then the king of personal computers, handed Microsoft a massive investment to build OS/2, hyped as operating system of the future. But behind closed doors, Microsoft secretly funneled those resources into its own Windows project, the very weapon that would later bury IBM in the PC platform war. Did it really happen that way? Was Microsoft a tricky corporate con artist or a clever underdog? And was IBM truly the victim, or did they fumble the crown all by themselves? Let's rewind to the tech drama that changed the computer world forever. IBM and Microsoft's tech marriage kicked off in 1980. At the time, IBM had been the king of corporate computing for 2 decades, thanks to its hulking mainframe machines, big boxy beasts that took up entire rooms and came with matching big price tags. Basically, they sold or leased these giants, bundled with hardware, operating systems, and the latest enterprise software, basically owning the business tech world. With 300,000 employees and the nickname Big Blue, IBM looked untouchable. But then, in the late 70s, a new troublemaker arrived: the personal computer. Smaller companies like Apple and Commodore were suddenly cranking out affordable, desk-friendly machines, and the public was hooked. Eventually, IBM decided it couldn't ignore the trend any longer, and in 1980, stepped into the ring. Problem was, IBM had been building mainframes for so long they didn't exactly have a PC starter kit lying around. If they built one from scratch, it would take 3 to 4 years, basically forever in tech years, and that was a big no-no. Under massive pressure to get something to market fast, IBM took the unthinkable open architecture shortcut. They'd grab Intel 8086 chips and other parts straight off the shelf, slap them together, and outsource the operating system to a scrappy little Seattle company called Microsoft. This way, IBM could launch quickly without betting the whole farm. Of course, as we'll see, this shortcut would come back to bite them. Back in 1980, Microsoft was basically a scrappy little software shop with about 50 employees. They made programs for small computers and were doing just fine, but they had never landed a giant client like IBM. So when Big Blue came knocking, it was like winning the nerd lottery. This wasn't just about money. It was instant credibility, the kind of brand endorsement a small tech company could only dream of. Naturally, Microsoft jumped at the chance and got to work on an operating system that would later be called MS-DOS. Fast forward to 1981, and the IBM PC officially hit the market, powered by MS-DOS and Intel's x86 chips. The deal was simple. IBM would pay Microsoft a royalty for every PC sold with MS-DOS, and Microsoft kept the right to sell that same operating system to other PC makers. That little detail would turn out to be huge. The IBM PC was a monster hit, snatching up 76% of the market in no time. Its open architecture encouraged tons of developers to write apps for IBM PCs. More apps meant more users. More users meant more apps. A perfect tech feedback loop. Microsoft, meanwhile, was surfing this wave like a pro, growing more than 50-fold in size and revenue during the 80s. Not bad for a company that started out the decade smaller than your average neighborhood cafe. IBM PC's glory days didn't last long. Its open architecture was like giving out the secret recipe to your world-famous burger. Suddenly, anyone could whip up a perfect copy and sell it cheaper. These clones were 100% compatible with IBM PCs, but without the IBM price tag. The PC market was booming, but IBM's slice of the pie was shrinking fast from a dominating 76% in 1983 to just 36% in 1986. Ouch! Meanwhile, Microsoft wasn't sweating. Whether you bought an IBM PC or one of those cheeky clones, chances were it still needed MS-DOS. More clones meant more software sales, and more software sales meant Bill Gates could start measuring his net worth in billions rather than tens of millions. In 1986, Microsoft went public, Gates became a billionaire, and IBM was left staring at the scoreboard, wondering if they'd made a terrible business deal. So, in 1985, IBM decided it was time to hit the reset button. They kicked off the OS/2 project, a shiny next-gen operating system meant to kick MS-DOS to the curb. This time IBM would keep the keys to the kingdom. They'd control the licenses, lock it to IBM-approved hardware, and make it far harder for cloners to crash the party. Around the same time, Intel had rolled out new X286 and X386 chips that could juggle multiple tasks and handle more memory. IBM promised OS/2 would support these advanced chips and provide a fancy graphical interface to replace the ancient MS-DOS command prompt. IBM was still a heavyweight in the PC market, so if OS/2 took off, they'd not only reclaim the crown, but also give the clone makers a serious headache. Microsoft, on the other hand, saw OS/2 as the villain in their superhero movie. MS-DOS was their golden goose, and the PC clone army was their secret weapon. Cutting them off would hurt big time. Microsoft had their own MS-DOS replacement in the works, Windows, sleek, graphical, and, most importantly, able to run on just about any PC, not just IBM's. By the time IBM came knocking about OS/2, Microsoft was already deep into Windows development, and IBM knew it, which meant that under the polite smiles and corporate handshakes, a tech rivalry was already shaping up.
By 1985, Microsoft was growing fast, but still couldn't cut the cord with IBM and run full speed into the booming PC clone market. Instead, they half-heartedly hopped onto IBM's OS/2 project, using it as a backup plan for Windows. IBM, meanwhile, didn't see Microsoft as a rival, more like a lucky sidekick who would happily fetch coffee if told. Their OS/2 partnership deal allowed Microsoft to keep tinkering with both OS/2 and Windows, which had a big impact later on. IBM smugly assumed Windows would quietly disappear once OS/2 took over the world. To calm IBM's nerves, Microsoft pitched Windows as nothing more than a stepping stone for DOS users to eventually cross into OS/2 land. But once the joint work began, Microsoft quickly realized collaborating with IBM was like driving a sports car but having to follow a horse cart. First came the culture clash. At Microsoft, decisions flew fast, code got written overnight, and teams pivoted quickly when something didn't work. It was scrappy, chaotic, but effective. IBM, meanwhile, was built for stability and caution, operating like a giant ocean liner, slow to turn, weighed down by layers of management, endless paperwork, and long approval processes. Then things really soured over the processor choice. Microsoft wanted OS/2 to target the shiny new 386 chips, but IBM insisted on the older 286 simply because they had warehouses full of them. IBM was still thinking like a hardware company, trying to clear out old inventory instead of building for the future. Microsoft found such decisions short-sighted, but couldn't make IBM change their mind, so they doubled down on secretly making Windows awesome instead.
Sensing Microsoft was dragging its feet on OS/2 like a kid stalling bedtime, IBM decided to take matters into their own hands. In 1987, they quietly assembled a secret team to develop OS/2 2.0 without informing Microsoft. The goal was to cut Microsoft's influence and align OS/2 closer to IBM's own interest. But Microsoft eventually caught wind of the secret side project, and it only confirmed what they'd been suspecting. IBM wasn't planning a shared future. They were plotting a return to PC domination and willing to brush Microsoft aside. The PC platform had become a winner-takes-all battle, and Microsoft wouldn't let IBM grab the trophy at their expense. So they took the gloves off and made their countermoves that were subtle, deliberate, and, when necessary, downright devious. Publicly, Microsoft wore the mask of loyalty. In meetings with IBM, they often painted Windows as a dead end and promised full commitment on OS/2. Privately, they were pouring resources into Windows as if their survival depended on it, because it did. They gave IBM just enough false hope to keep the funding and the partnership alive, all while quietly diverting talent and time away from OS/2. Out of Microsoft's staff assigned OS/2, a staggering 70% were secretly redeployed to Windows, with IBM footing the bill. Microsoft engineers were instructed to keep Windows progress secret. Meanwhile, bogus updates were routinely sent to IBM, showing OS/2 development humming along. Microsoft executives will later explain their mindset with blunt honesty. Microsoft hated OS/2's roadmap, but needed IBM's money and brand credibility to launch Windows. So they acted obedient in front of IBM while building their real future in the shadows. The trickery ran deep. Microsoft even withheld key components of the OS/2 code they were contractually obligated to provide. What they did deliver often looked like a rushed student project, buggy, incomplete, and more trouble to fix than it was worth. IBM's VP later complained that Microsoft had promised weekly fixes for 18 months straight, but these fixes rarely materialized as promised, stalling OS/2's development cycle while Windows sped ahead unencumbered. The games didn't stop there. Some within IBM claimed that Microsoft went as far as sabotaging their own software for OS/2. According to one OS/2 evangelist, Microsoft Word and Excel on OS/2 were abnormally slow, clumsy, and broken, while the same apps ran smoothly and swiftly on Windows. To him, there was no doubt. The sloppiness was deliberate to make Windows look like the superior choice in every head-to-head comparison. IBM could have seen the red flags, but the company was too slow to respond. In the late 80s, IBM was a giant maze of middle managers, endless committees, and departments that barely talked to each other. Even when some IBM engineers started distrusting Microsoft, the warning signs got lost in the corporate fog. Nobody acted fast enough to actually change course. There was also a bit of fear, too, because back then, Microsoft was still seen as the only team quick and clever enough to pull off a next-gen operating system. IBM brass assumed Gates was just playing it safe by keeping Windows around, instead of cooking up a full-blown competitor behind their backs. By early 1990, IBM had already released 3 versions of OS/2, and they all flopped like a fish out of water. The system was bloated, pricey, and not that user-friendly. Worse, it lacked support for many popular printers and monitors, and forget about a wide variety of apps. OS/2 only ran smoothly on high-end IBM hardware, which made other PC makers yawn and look away. Then in May 1990, Microsoft released Windows 3.0 like a flashy new sports car at a used sedan convention. It was sleek, fast, easy on the eyes, worked with all existing DOS and Windows apps, and, best of all, ran on pretty much any PC clone. From day one, Windows 3.0 had killer apps like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, software that people actually wanted to use. So PC makers fell over themselves to preload it on their machines. That sparked a snowball effect. More users attracted more developers made more apps, and more apps attracted even more users until Windows was sitting pretty with 90% of the market within 2 years. OS/2 was left fighting over the scraps, and by the time IBM rolled out OS/2 2.0 in 1992, the party was over. Microsoft had already locked it down and gone home with the trophy. After watching Windows dance on OS/2's grave, IBM finally snapped. They realized Microsoft had been fooling them in public while quietly funding Windows with IBM's own money.
IBM felt conned and marched straight to court. They sued Microsoft for breach of contract, unfair competition, and flat-out sabotage. They claimed Microsoft had promised to make OS/2 the future, but instead built Windows behind their back, swiped OS/2's code, and dragged their feet on crucial drivers, all to make OS/2 flop. Basically, IBM accused Microsoft of playing double agent and playing dirty. Microsoft hit back with lawyer-grade smugness, pointing out the fine print in their agreement with IBM, which, as it turns out, explicitly let Microsoft build rival operating systems. Oops. IBM, in classic corporate fashion, hadn't even read the contract properly. Microsoft also argued they couldn't have stolen OS/2 code because they co-owned it. Then, almost theatrically, they pulled out IBM's own internal documents, memos, emails, internal reports, and laid them bare in court. These materials revealed missed deadlines, turf wars between hardware and software teams, sales divisions ignoring engineers, and managers brushing off user complaints. Their message to the court was simple. OS/2 didn't need Microsoft to fail. IBM was already busy shooting their own foot. By airing IBM's internal chaos in public, Microsoft flipped the script. No longer the villain, they painted themselves as the scrappy underdog who outsmarted a bloated dinosaur. The lawsuit looked like sour grapes from a giant who tripped over its own feet. In 1996, Microsoft wrote IBM a $120 million "let's end this drama" check, and both sides called it quits. By the year 2000, Microsoft was sitting pretty with a market cap of $586 billion, while IBM trailed far behind at $154 billion, left holding a pile of what-ifs and wondering where it all went wrong. Just because the Big Blue kicked off the whole IBM PC revolution doesn't mean they could keep the crown forever. In the tech game, if you snooze, you lose. And IBM was hitting the snooze button hard. Instead of giving customers what they actually wanted, IBM decided to herd them into IBM's comfort zone, like a stubborn chef insisting you only eat what's on his menu. OS/2 wasn't really designed to win hearts. It was more like a velvet rope to keep the cheaper PC clones out so IBM could hog the buffet. Problem was, that plan backfired. Customers felt boxed in, Microsoft felt boxed out, and pretty soon the IBM-Microsoft bromance turned into a bitter custody battle over the PC's future. To make it worse, IBM's corporate bloat, endless red tape, and hubris meant they couldn't even execute their own flawed OS/2 plan properly. Sure, Microsoft might have played some shady cards, but you can't blame them for distrusting a partner unable to grasp the potential of the software business. Microsoft got it. PCs needed great hardware and killer software working together to hook customers. IBM, meanwhile, still treated it as if selling mainframes in 1970s. So, Microsoft decided to take the wheel, even if they had to nudge Big Blue off the road to do it.
Now, what's your take? Do you think Microsoft went too far, or IBM screwed themselves up? Leave a comment so we can discuss. Thank you.